really happening right now, what you're watching.
Yeah, these players are not this fast. John Johnson, our Simic Nexus player, was on the play. Going to work that blink of an eye. Got to keep that damage off the table. Robert Wagner-Krenkal deploying some Mistcloak Heralds. No Curious Obsessions to get going. And just more blinks for John.
Dude, this is kind of...
Patrick cannot contain himself right now.
Watching these main phases blink in the eye on a 1-1 at super fast speed is a lot for me to handle right now.
You mentioned earlier in the broadcast that the problem with Mistcloak Herald is that it's bad.
Yeah. Well, no,
that was the downside of the card. John Johnson disagrees.
Yeah, that was...
Got to stem the bleeding.
Those were some intense blink of an eye. I was not ready for it.
And Krenkel's got a pretty stocked hand. Ton of cards there. Pressure on the battlefield. He's attacking Johnson down to 12. I think there's a Wizard's Retort plus some other stuff hanging out there.
Yeah, I mean, you try to see if you can hold up 3 points of pressure, three points of pressure on top of your counter spells. Maybe that holds off for long enough.
Hydroid Krasis for Johnson. X equals 4. Draw 2, gain 2, though. The Wizard's Retort does come down on that. You don't want that blocker for your Trickster. Curious Obsession on the Herald. Here's an attack for 4. Now the deck's doing its thing.
Yep, the ball's rolling, drawing some extra cards here. But, Johnson's making the land drops, and this deck can get to spots where you easily play over a Spell Pierce. You can do 2 threatening things in 1 turn, and is Wagner-Krenkal's clock fast enough?
And it seems to be Johnson's not really doing anything here. This Obsession's connected multiple times. Kind of wish he had a blink of an eye for that. Here's a Nexus of Fate for Johnson. Looks like a Spell Pierce, and that one's getting shuffled back in. It takes a lot of lands to get around Spell Pierce on Nexus.
Yeah, I gotta say to our producers and everyone else who's kind of like working on the back end, if you are going to come into a match where someone is just main phasing Blink of an Eye on turn 2 on a 1/1, you need to warn me ahead of time. You can't just do that. That was too much. I'm sorry. I usually don't break like that.
Just coming off the back of that Snubhorn Century, you were already worked up, man. that's a lot.
It's a lot for me to handle.
Wagner still just very much online with his Obsession. Johnson's down to 5. Just a lot of lands. No Reclamation online, which makes it really hard for his deck to function.
Yeah, well, he has Wilderness Reclamation in hand. I think you're trying to test spell again with Nexus of Fate and then get to Wilderness Reclamation, try to do everything over the course of one turn cycle.
Johnson's down to 1, and Wagner-Krenkal's missed a number of land drops, which means his hand spells.
Yeah,
but Nexus of Fate gets hit by Wizard's Retort.
He can only cast so many spells, though. It's possible here that Johnson can overwhelm everything.
Yeah.
Depending on how good his leftovers are.
4 mana is a pretty serious threshold when you control the wizard, though. The double Wizard's Retort is very much a possibility. And we are well out of Spell Pierce range. There was just Nexus plus 2 mana spell there. Kind of has to be Wizard's Retort. And here's a Reclamation. And a second Reclamation. Search for Escanta. Johnson will have 2 untapped triggers. There's a Memorial to Genius just hanging out in the lands. Before that happens, Wagner-Krenkel is going to blink of an eye 1 of the Reclamations. That stunts the mana development quite a bit. And Johnson just has to crack that Memorial to Genius, and I think just 6 mana left over means you can't Nexus.
Yeah, heads up play there by Wagner-Krenkel. Might have cut him off.
Yeah, and it looks like he did. John Johnson's going to pick him up. Wagner-Krenkal up a game. Mono blue aggro over Simic Nexus, and now he gets to actually get better in the matchup. Already being up a game, he gets to cut those dive downs. They're not doing anything. You're watching with the Cardboard Live extension. You have the deck list. You can pull that up here. When you go to Wagner-Krenkal's side for the mono blue deck, the sideboard, he has 2 Deep Freeze, 2 Entrancing Melody, 2 Exclusion Mages, 3 Surge Mare, 2 Fairy Duelists, 3 Negate, and a Search for Escanta.
The 3 Negates are the obvious prize here. I mean, being able to swap the dive downs out and get those in, major upgrade. And, you get the sense here if Wagner-Krenkel is able to do the 1-drop into Curious Obsession, when you have Negate post board on top of your Wizard's Retort and the Spell Pierces, it might be hard for Johnson to take a meaningful game action.
And Johnson, he is the player down a game. He's going to need some help on the Simic Nexus side of things. He has 3 Negates, 3 Crushing Canopies, a Sagittarius Volley, 4 Pyogenic Ooze, 2 Carnage Tyrant, a Nezahal Primal Tide, and a Palaka Worm. I pop quiz Todd on Sagittarius Volley. You got the Oracle on this one, Patrick?
No, I do not. do not recognize that as a Magic card.
Yeah.
It's not that I know it and haven't seen it. I don't know what that is.
It is green and 2. It destroys a flying creature and deals 1 damage to all other flying creatures controlled by the player that controlled it.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, get that in there.
Real good.
Yeah,
Real good.
That's great. Yeah, get that in there. The Crushing Cannon piece as well. I could be talked into the Block Worm.
Yeah. Gain some life.
Carnage Tyrant just doesn't block effectively enough, I think, for this kind of matchup. But the Block Worm's impactful.
Also, your opponent's likely to be heavy on negate, stuff that won't counter a creature spell.
Right.
Players looking at some 7 cards.
Johnson with Blink of the Eye ready to go for Merfolk of the Pearl Trident.
Terramander is the early play for Robert.
Didn't do it.
That one that's flying men. Siren Storm Tamer that can block for Blink of an Eye. Back Johnson's way, and and that's why you target the Storm Tamer itself.
Oh, yep.
Wagner picks that one up. Back on Johnson's side, there's Search for Escanta.
His Blink of an Eye is just burning a hole in his pocket.
I'm Blink of an Eye rich. Gotta spend it. You can't take it with you, Patrick.
Blink of an Eye flooded.
And there's Curious Obsession on the Terramander. Wagner once again online. Siren Storm Tamer back up for that obsessed Terramander.
Yeah, you kind of have this one, can you get out of this turn without anything too bad happening? You do that, and then, Krenkal's about as rolled up as you could ask for.
And there's Crushing Canopy on the Obsession itself, but Wagner has a backup on his next turn. Connecting for 3 there. Looks like Johnson's at 14. Wagner just churning out extra cards. Looks like he has some backup counterspells as well. Flash into Merfolk Trickster. Once again, the Obsession will be canopied, though now Wagner has a pretty good team, attacking for 4, Johnson at 10.
Yeah, and it looks like you have Tempest in here with Wizard's Retort back up. I think this is just too much too soon for Johnson.
Johnson has a pretty full graveyard, not able to transform Search for Escanta just yet, just going to cast Chemister's Insight. And there's no Reclamation, so he's just kind of tapped out on his mana here. Back on Wagner's side, that Tempest in, there's a land, and that's a lethal attack. Robert Wagner-Krenkal is going to advance to the finals 2-0.